Three, two, one, go. Yes, police officers have their biases, but they are often from minority backgrounds themselves, and they are often from their local area and work at their local police stations. This is very different to the cops are made by Google by very privileged software engineers who are often from very privileged backgrounds and often have no idea what is going on within the local communities and within these local areas. A few things in this speech, 3 cases. Firstly, what is often very expensive, so you just have less of them and can't do policing. Secondly, why they're biased. And thirdly, why victims don't feel comfortable coming to a machine like they do a human, so crimes don't get reported. Before that, though, I want to give some characterization of who makes these and what they are. Note, they are likely to be made by a company like Google. All tech that we see in the world, such as mobile phones, the internet, is centralized in a small number of companies. These companies can monopolize the market. A, because they have access to the most skilled workers in the countries that they operate, such as America, and can often create the most skilled talent, which can come up with the ideas and invent the best products fastest. B, they have the largest amount of capital and money to make these expensive products in the first place, so they can dominantly be the first to market and actually get the product. C, as well, they just have available tech in their companies. They can use tech and repurpose software that's already been created to the end, or repurpose electrical engineering techniques, for example, from the other products to these robots, so they have an advantage, so they come to market fast. They can easily dominate the market to have the best product and outcompete their competitors. Note, the people that make these then are often individuals within the West. This motion is global and it happens all around the world as well, not just within America or Pacific countries. Note, these are made by software engineers and electrical engineers within Western countries, or even outside of Western countries, are often very privileged compared to their local areas. This is firstly because of the fact they have higher levels of, to get into these professions compared to the police force. You need very high levels of education. You need masters. If AI, you often need even PhDs because these things are just such a high level of technicality. This means that it's mostly people from privileged backgrounds that have access to their education financially, are not as biased against them, because people have seen people of. When you do your job applying to a police officer, there's less bias against you from an ethnic minority background. That is, if you're black, you're more likely to be able to become a police officer than a software engineer, because people have seen police officers from these ethnic minority backgrounds before, so they're less likely to be biased against you than if you're going for a job, for example, at a tech company. Note, at the same time, you're more to see role models within the police as a black individual, let's say, then as actually software engineers, you're more to the place that go in the first place, you feel you're going to be more successful. Notice to become clear why this framing is important during my speech. First reason then, why is it expensive so you just can't hire more of these? No, it's expensive. A, they're humanoid. No, we've not been able to create humanoid robots that can do half these things already. They can ruin. You can maybe create a robot that walks like a person who can barely walk. We've never created a robot that can actually run and do these things as a cop. You need complex balance sensors. That means the technology is going to be very complex to create and therefore expensive to create because all the engineers, etc., that have to pay. B, engineers, as per my analysis, are already given are very expensive compared to police officers. This means that good engineers require such a high level of education and therefore relatively expensive to train compared to police officers. It's a lot more expensive to pay engineers to fix these robots and maintain them and create them in the first place compared to police officers. This means they're very expensive and you can often afford very little of them. Note that police budgets are often in most countries very restricted. This is because people want to spend money on other things like healthcare and education. Note, they're only going to be even lower in this world though. Within the status quo, people often want to give to police forces because they feel that they're humans like themselves. They can relate to cops going, oh, we need more funding, we're struggling. More they can relate to the idea of a machine because they at least see a cop as something like them and imagine struggling to have a different department in their own situations. Note at the same time, B, there's a perception that machines can do everything. There's a perception that the robot can do the job of 10 people, even if it can't, it can only be in one place at one time. This means there's a perception that you don't need to employ as many of these people, and you just get less of these bots being paid for, you get budgets being cut for police departments, meaning these bots, there's a lot of crime which goes unnoticed, goes unreported, and goes unpoliced. Secondly, biases. Biases are bad. These bots are trained on big data, that's how you train AI. That means they have all the biases trained in them, that at least a couple have. That is, they're more likely to arrest a black person because black people get arrested more often in its data training set. But it's worse than a cop for two reasons. One, because you can't just make it read a manual. If you give it a manual, there's one data point, you take the same interest, and it doesn't change the behavior in the same way a human will if you give it one point of data. But secondly, that data goes back a long time. That is, it goes back for decades often because it's so big. You can retrain cops to the modern scenario. You can't retrain machines in the same way. Just on small amount of data from the last year, when people upload matter, etc., what recently happened, meaning that they will actually be bigoted and more dated in their views. Well, at the same time as well, though, as per my training, note that even if none of that is true, and you it's often the case that the things will not try to eradicate, the actual people who make these will not try to eradicate the biases within them. That is because, as I've explained in training, they have made the people more privileged than cops. Yes, cops are often privileged, but they're nowhere near as privileged as people who write the software at Google for two reasons. One, because of what I explained to you in training, that black people are more, ethnic minorities, they're more likely to be able to join the police than they are to become software engineers at Google, because they're more likely to have high levels of education and more likely to have less biases against them for all the analysis I've already given you. But two, cops are employed at a local level. Most black communities have black cops because you join your local police force in your local police station in your local area. Notice this is not true if Google is making your policing in the middle of California. Note at the same time, it's mostly global, so it's exceptionally bad if you're in a developing country. And Google in California is making your policing in your area. I think that's global.
You say that it'll be more expensive. Won't it be cheaper in the long run with the mass replacement of police officers that's not only but salaries?
No, the still applies. You still need to employ these people to fix the box, etc. So this is why Google has to buy software engineers to search because it still has to run search. Okay. Thirdly, on victim closure. People don't want to approach a machine. If you've been a victim of a crime, you often don't know what to do in your moment. Your head's spinning. You need to go to the police. You've probably never been in this scenario before, and you don't always know to do that. When there's a cop is a human, you often somebody you can relate to. You feel this person will help you. You feel this person will be kind to you. And when you do approach them, they can tease out information from you, being nice to being investigating the crime. The issue is you often don't even want to approach a machine in the first place. It's something you can't relate to. You've had bad experiences with before. We all call up their call centres, and the bots just haven't worked for us. They haven't understood what you said. You'll feel it with the same with the machine. You'll feel that you'll go through the bot asks some stupid question and it won't understand what you're saying. No, even if this isn't true, it's the perception you have of the machine, so the perception that you feel will be true and you feel you won't be able to approach this person and actually report your crime. So most crimes just go unreported and don't get solved, and people don't get caught, and victims don't get their closure. Vote open position.
I time to speak for that speech. Now I call on the Deputy Prime Minister to state their case. Here. Stream is on.
Okay.
The stream is on, so if you want to.
Love the stream, let's go. Right, okay. Okay, panel, notice how we gave 5 central points in our opening and they've all failed to be rebutted. There has been some rebuttal, but I'm going to show you ultimately why that failed and why you should vote for this house, right? We modeled our thing out as modeled it out with done by zone. I think that's a really important thing to say because there is a suggestion that there's going to be a lot of errors in this program, but actually what we do with this slow rollout is slowly fix these errors. What you can do is software updates. And can I just add, actually, these software updates can be done way quicker, almost instantaneously whenever the program is aside, rather than slow kind of retraining classes that often half of the cops don't show up for and the other half don't listen anyway. So actually, we know that the updates with the problems that are inevitably going to happen, right? And this is what the point is symmetrical, right? Because inevitably, there's going to be problems on both sides of the house with kind of fixing current wrongful police practices. But the difference is on this side of the house, those get fixed instantaneously when we recognize them, right? So there's no other thing that's really important. The second thing we said is that the racial bias is wrong. And there's basically been no response to this. And the idea was, oh, Google's not that diverse. I can guarantee you Google headquarters is more diverse, not only ethnically, but also based on a nationality point of view than any of your local police force. I can guarantee you this is true, not only because of tech companies' hiring processes, but also There's several other reasons, right? And considering it is EU backed, this is really important, right? Considering how much the EU emphasizes plurality and diversity within its legislative and legislative creations. Go ahead.
In a primarily black neighborhood,
Mhm.
why would you have all of a sudden lots of white people in the police force, given that not that many people live there?
Second.
In a predominantly black neighborhood, why would you all of a sudden have a lot of people from ethnic majorities, given that they don't live there and wouldn't sign up to be part of these police departments in the first place?
Because a lot of the time, the police department is incorporated not based. If you're a minority, you don't have your own separate police department. You're often part of the larger majority district, right? So I think that's completely misses how the structure of how these zones and zoning actually works. But this is the third point, and I think this is a real crux of our argument, is that arrests are going to be done consistently by the book, right? And there's all sorts of reasons why this is really important. This is ultimately going to lead to more convictions. We've all seen 21 Jump Street, right? But one of the funniest bits is where they refuse to read the Miranda rights and therefore can't prosecute somebody who's obviously guilty. This is not a problem within our world. Everybody always gets read the Miranda rights. Everybody always consistently has the procedure done by the book, and actually we're going to get more guilty people because of that, right? And therefore there's going to be more convictions, which leads on to the fourth point, which is also failed to be rebutted, is that actually, despite there was some skepticism of there's going to be no fake justice system because everybody's going to be nervous about computers. You give your data to computers all the time. It doesn't seem this has been kind of a Luddite argument, like, oh no, we're not going to trust computers. Literally everyone trusts a computer. I'm live streaming right now. So I don't think this is going to be a problem at all, and really you're going to have to, the opposition failed to say why there's going to be a decrease in faith in the justice system. If anything, because the justice system is going to be more efficient. The reason why people don't trust the justice system is because it's clogged and clogged and clogged, right? That's the reason why, because the case never gets processed. Now, policing is going to be way more efficient in this case, and so there's going to be more processes, and therefore people are going to be able to trust the justice system more because they know it's going to get sorted out, or at least they have more faith in it's going to get sorted out than under our current world. I think it's also really important to point out the non-lethal aspects. Right now, currently, cops panic. Oh my goodness, I don't know what to do, so I'll just shoot the guy. Well, actually, in our world, that's not really a problem because the robot will always know what to do, and I think that's a really important, and so we have less harm on that aspect. I also want to read on a couple things. So, the role model argument. Yeah, maybe your mind can see that, but ultimately the weight of a more efficient justice system, I would much rather have like black role models in terms and ethnic minority role models in terms of the programmers, right? We can also have alternative role models. Even if there were no more role models, I'd much rather have an efficient justice system that keeps people safe and that people can rely on. Also, this is kind of useful like anything that's automized. It's like, oh, we shouldn't get rid of shop workers because they could be role models. It's like, well, true, but then they're all using the automated checkout, right? So the reality is this isn't really much of a problem. All that's happened is that role models have transferred to other things. I think this is a really, really weak point compared to what would be a more efficient justice system with less people dying, with less George Floyds. I think this is a really, really important matter that you're going to have to weigh up. And I don't think you've seen that weighing that. Oh, they're really weird argument. Sure, yeah.
Have you taken into account any human error in programming or faulty models?
Yes, I totally agree with you. There will be human error in this programming. Here's the difference. It's just going to be a lot less, right? When you're having a collective kind of show, right, or collective session, right, where you're all going in and going, oh, what can we do here? That's when you have less human error. What you have human error is a single cop who's panicking. That's what you get human error. That's not going to happen with a great Robocop. But also in a really weird argument, I should touch on about potential like funding shortages. People are going to be like, oh, I can't relate to human beings asking. I only want police to have more money because they're human beings and they ask for more money. That is not why people want more funding of police. They want more funding because they want to be safer, and they're going to be safer on this side of the house. So just to summarize, we've got 5 central arguments. The rollout is going to be done zone by zone, which means the software is going to be modified and changed, right? Racial bias is gone, which is a really, really important thing. Of course, there is always bias, and we can correct that almost instantaneously. The arrests are going to be, this is a really important part, the arrests are going to decline in the book, which is going to be more convictions, which leads to our fourth point. More convictions are going to lead to more faith in the justice system. And not only that, it's going to be more efficient, so more things are going to go through, which leads to more faith. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for the speech. Now I call upon DB related proposition to close out of our here. Give me 1 second.
Very good.
Yeah, good.
Starting 3, 2, 1. Criminal justice system requires 3 things. Firstly, it requires actually good Robocops or good police officers, and we're going to talk about which one's better. Secondly, it requires an engagement in reporting, and thirdly, it requires the public to feel safe. I'm going to talk about why all of those things get worse and don't. Firstly, how good is Robocop? I want to talk about like 6 things, but firstly, before that, I want to point out that if CEO wanted to talk about how human error might be a problem, we don't think that's actually the case, right? We think that police officers also have human error, right? We don't think that's what this debate is about. Clearly humans make mistakes in both sides of the house. There are probably ways to mitigate against human errors. We're going to talk about the more important reasons why Robocop is a problem. So 6 things. Firstly, Robocop is likely to use features that incur biases, right? They're going to need some level of image tracking to see what people are doing. They're going to need to use some sort of physical characteristics to determine things like suspicious activity, but also to be able to react to situations and see what kind of physical reactions they need to take, right? To that extent, they're likely to see some sort of physical behavior. Now, maybe this might not be the greatest, right? But they're likely to associate other cultural factors or things that could somewhat be linked to race. Like artificial intelligence is probably good at picking up biases. Maybe it's not through the color of your skin, but it can still be racist through other things which are also attached to race and other biases that exist, like the way that someone walks, right, being associated to some race, right? There are probably ways that it's going to find biases and pick up biases, even if it's not looking at the color of someone's skin, and it definitely needs to use some sort of physical characteristic in order to do a good job. So these biases probably exist. Secondly, why do these biases exist in training data and why it's likely to be worse on that side of the house? Because firstly, right, you need training data in order to train up these Robocops, right? Which means that you're going to need to use examples of policing in the past, right? But most crucially, right, in order for this AI to be any good whatsoever, and note that this is a heavily AI-driven model, right? This means that you're going to need years and years of data for this AI to be good. AI is a very slow process. I can find it, take it from I'm a computer scientist, right? It's a very long process, right? You need literally decades of training data in order to create a Robocop, especially if you go to roll it out globally, right? This is going to have to be something that is highly sophisticated, which means that it's going to use examples of police actions, and so it's likely to stop these biases. But why is it worse, right? Because the training guidelines we give people now are up to date and modern. But for an AI, right, you need to give it decades of training data, which means some of the old biases which you don't teach police officers anymore are things that you're going to need to give to this Robocop in order for it to be an effective Robocop, because you need to give it more data than you give like average cops. But also then, thirdly, who develops this AI? Because I think that's important, right? And who creates the guidelines, right? Just because they have legal guidelines or they have ethical guidelines, that doesn't mean these guidelines are good, right? The police follow guidelines, but those guidelines are often bad and they result in things like institutional racism and like systematic problems because the guidelines themselves are problems. So that's probably symmetric on both sides of the house. But also, right, I think like maths analysis on the kinds of people who are in charge is important, right? If you're someone who's a software developer, you're probably quite far detached from crime and the issues that people face. You also haven't grown up in these types of neighborhoods. You haven't interacted with these minorities. You yourself are also unlikely to be a minority because stand still structurally shuts up people who are from disadvantaged backgrounds. However, right, police officers are more likely than a software
software developer to have grown up in a minority community, to be part of that minority themselves, but more importantly, just to understand the issues that people face on the ground. If you're a police officer, you interact with people who are part of these communities, you talk to them, you get to know them better, and the people in these police departments interact with their local communities. Software developers don't do that, they're quite far detached. And so you're likely to have less empathy and less good guidelines from those sorts of people that benefit the public. Fourthly, I think the fact that this is worldwide is also important, right? Because the situation in Mexico, right, with cartels is very different to average robbery in the UK, right? So this means that this means that either the AI is not going to be able to deal with these different scenarios and is likely to be ineffective, or it does say that you try and train it for as many different scenarios as possible. Given that you have to have very niche scenarios, the amount of training data we have for very niche things, like cartels in Mexico, diminishes, and so the training data itself is not sufficient for the Robocop to be good. The structural reason is actually why the Robocop probably won't have enough training data, or it's not in the world. We'll have structural issues that mean that it can't be effective in a wide variety of cases. So if you want to implement it worldwide, there are likely to be some deficiencies in some areas, and you're going to have to compromise and trade with things, which means that the Robocop is unlikely to be adaptable to different situations. Which leads me on to my fifth thing, that police officers are much more adaptable than robots, right? If you need to retrain or install new software updates, you need to find new training data, and then you don't have the decades of training data anymore because you've already used that up. If you want to install a software update, you're unlikely to have the sufficient training data to actually teach the robot to adopt new characteristics versus humans, which are quite good at things like natural language processing and being able to pick up what to do quite easily, right? And also, this means, and I think if you look at individual areas as well, it's much better that the police officer from the area which knows people who live there and is able to interact with those people is in charge of the crime important there. Also, finally, Matt's talking why this is expensive and governments are unlikely to fund this very much because they see robots as a big blanket solution and they don't see the problems with automation. Okay, so let's talk about collaboration. Why are people unlikely to talk to these robots? 3 reasons. A, there's a lack of human empathy. You don't feel like this is a person who can trust, and has emotions like you, and you can actually talk to and feel like you're understood. So you're unlikely to feel that you can report crimes to an entity that actually is able to reflect your desires and is able to look up your interests. B, I think also often people who you report to are from the same backgrounds. Right, when you're reporting to a police officer who's lived in the same community as you, grew up there, knows the issues in your neighborhood, you're much more likely to feel like you can trust them. But also see, there is a perception that AI is unsafe. I'll talk about that in a second. Why is this important? Because robots cannot see everything. You need to report crimes, you need people to talk to the police, you need information. If people are unwilling to go to robots, right, to give them information, then you have a huge problem in terms of your ability to have any efficacy in the criminal justice system. Finally, how do ordinary people feel? As Matt points out, the government see robots as a good thing that are a blanket solution, but ordinary people don't. They see robots as a dystopian Terminator-esque thing, which is likely to be a huge problem, right? 3 things to talk about here. A, firstly, it's a fucking robot. It's not like someone taking your data, right? We may trust companies that take our data, but we can't see that. When you see literal robots that are in charge of you, or when you're stopped and searched by a robot, that's a much more visceral experience, which makes you distrusting of this kind of thing. But also, B, there's a lot of media narratives and pop culture narratives that mean that people are distrusting of robots being in charge, right? Things like Terminator, right? Things like that mean that people are literally, from a young age, educated to distrust robots, right? Which means that they're likely to feel viscerally uncomfortable. So I think that in and of itself is an impact. The fact that people are like to walk out and feel unsafe when they see these robots in for all of those reasons, so proud to purchase.
Thank you for the speech. Now I invite the member of government to say that. Yes.
Sorry about last time, I got the timer wrong. It's fine.
I'm going to talk about why we need Robocops and for two reasons. First of all, economically, and first of all, because we also think it's better for the police. But first of all, let's react to some points that the opposition brought up. So the opposition like to talk a lot about all these issues that the Robocops theoretically might have due to programming, but also the first part of the government already said that that kind of depends on the programmers. And it's like, seems like not really a good point to say, well, it might go like that, because training a police officer also currently, it seems to be not very systematically and not very efficient in a lot of places. So at least it will be like the same and definitely probably better than, but not worse. Because why should it be worse? Because training police officer now is obviously not working. So having the programmers try to make it more universal just seems like a big advantage. Which leads me to my first point. Why do we need the Robocops in the first place? Well, the reason why we need it is because we have a huge shortage of police officers. Most places cannot find people who want to work this job anymore. This is an extremely physically and emotionally demanding job. And there's just a lack of people who actually want to do this nowadays. And that is why we need this new transformation. And this transformation will come in some way. And this is the safest option. And doing it now is the safest option. Because then now we can figure out all the issues, right? We still have enough human cops that can actually keep our current state safe. If we do it in like 20 years and then there's like 3 officers left in a small town, then figure out all the issues. This will be way, way worse than doing it now, which is the reason why we need Robocops, and we need to have this transformation that the first government already talked about, and we need to start doing it now. Because this lag is coming, if we want to or not. It is an issue, and it's an issue everywhere. Nobody wants to take these jobs anymore, and that is for a good reason. We also think that due to the universal training, that it will just be better in general, because for example, if you take the training in Germany and the US, in the US it's like 10 months, and in Germany it's up to 2 years. So if you have this more universal standard, more unsafe places can actually be improved. We think that a more universal standard can be good, but as the opposition said, there's nobody ever said that locals won't help to actually impact these robots. They will also give suggestions and tell them about the community. Of course, it's not one robot that's the same no matter if you're in Mexico or if you're in England. It will be adjusted to your community. Nobody said it wouldn't be. Of course, people will get impact on what this community needs. Of course, they will tell them, oh, this is the best way to develop this community. Nobody said that this will not be the way it is. We need, of course, the locals to have an input. But the huge difference is, as somebody who comes from a small town and knows police officers, the police officers won't have anything against you because they are impartial. They don't know you, they don't have a history, they aren't going to be like, oh, that's the local drug addict. We're just going to see if he has something on him and just going to arrest him because we know he did something wrong and we can find a reason if we just look long enough. No, they will be impartial because they won't know who this is, they will treat every person the same, and this is the biggest reason why we need it. Because if you get adjusted to your community, then maybe you already know, oh, this is the place where all the criminals are gonna hang. So I'm gonna try and really hard and go against certain communities or go against certain people because you do know them. So therefore we think that this Robocops can be a newer creation of having local input while still having some kind of impartiality, which will make a better justice system. And also because it seems like the opposition was making the case that then the cops will be more understanding. Well, the justice system should be neutral. It shouldn't really be adjusted to. It should try to be helpful and not be unfair. But if you have an issue with justice just generally being neutral, then that's an issue with justice itself and not the Robocops. So therefore, I think that this point cannot really hold up. But what is another reason why we need these Robocops? Well, it's also better for the police itself. Why? Because Robocops, well, if they get destroyed, then that's not really bad. But if a police officer gets killed on the job, of course, it's really impactful for them. But the Robocop, that person, like but that robot can be rebuilt. It doesn't matter, it's safer. It can be put into really, really dangerous areas, which will increase the overall security that we have. It will make really unsafe places safer, and it will help to make areas that are currently not policed enough to establish a new way. Because we think this Robocop cannot just be a police officer, but also more seen as like a friend and helper that can help you in overtaking new tasks. Because they won't get tired, they won't get hurt, they won't need to take rest because they can be there 24/7. So they can overtake newer tasks, like maybe bringing somebody home so that they will arrive safe there, or helping children to adjust to adjust at the playground or something like that when their parents are on it, when they lost or. And we think that this is a new way. The opposition argued that people would not really like to interact with machines, but I say that that's wrong and this is really ignorant of people who have extreme social anxiety and who maybe have a disability. Because I personally, for example, prefer to go to McDonald's and order on the screen and actually talk to the person. And yeah, that makes me maybe a little bit weird, but I would also prefer to talk to a robot and not male police officer. Because honestly, if a male police officer was searching out, I would be scared of being sexually harassed. Yes, please.
Okay, so given the problems we told you about how there's not enough training data for like these Robocops to be very good at specific situations, and so they're probably going to be worse at crime, doesn't like the ability to stop crime outweigh the percent like harm police officers put themselves in?
So you mean that, but that robots kind of get specific training? But why would robots like get specific training? There's software updates, there's input that helps with them. I feel like it's way easier to specifically train a robot, and that's already something that the government also proves. So I feel like this is a point that can't be dismissed. Once again, why is it better for the police? Well, it's better for the police because they will also have new job opportunities. These police officers which are currently on the street, they don't need to deal with the little stuff anymore. They don't need to be at protests. They don't need to get people parking tickets. That's they kind of dance. They kind of become detectives or something higher up, which is most of the time the vision that police officers have anyway. While at the same time, not being at risk at getting hurt and then being out of their career for the rest of their life, which financially will be way better for us because we can't just rebuild the robots, but we cannot rebuild humans. So humans will be more likely to want to work for the police again because this nature aspect is eliminated for them. Therefore, we think that the police overall could extremely profit from having all these Robocops and therefore having really good and efficient workers relocating to higher positions when they can have a lot of influence while not dealing with the small stuff anymore. So, to sum up, why do we need these Robocops and why do we need them now? We need them because there's a shortage of police officers and we need a way to deal with it and we need to deal with it now. And also it will be better for the police, it will get fairer and better justice system. Thank you so much.
Thank the speaker for that speech. Now I invite the opposition to say their opinions.
I'm starting now. So first I would like to go over some results, some points that were mentioned before. First of all, there's been a lot of talk around the implicit bias in programming or on a real human cop. And the thing is, when assuming that you're programming your robot with using the law as a framework to establish what the robot is gonna do. Well, we can't ignore that all laws are inherently biased, like they are embedded full of implicit biases in terms of race and class and gender and etc. So we can't really rely on it to be the one moral truth, the one unbiased moral truth. For example, there have been a lot of attempts to use a lot of examples of attempts of using AI to like surveillance in order to make more efficient the job of the police. And in all of those occasions, there have been cases of the AI accusing people of color disproportionately of attempting crimes, even though they were not going to commit any crimes, simply because of the bias that was embedded in the programming. It was also mentioned how efficient this system would be compared to the current one, but assuming that the more Robocops we set up, the more arrests will be made. How is that going to hold up in our current judicial system? We're not getting more judges proportional to the more Robocops and the more arrests that we're expecting. So how are we gonna get around that? Our system will become clogged, and who knows if we don't have enough space in prisons, or like how are we gonna work around that?
Point of information.
I guess.
Right. So efficiency doesn't necessarily mean more arrests. It just means more good arrests that are done by the book, which then mitigates your problem with the justice system engaged.
Well, it's very likely that you would get more arrests simply because there is less human error or less people who are gonna be let go. I will go over that in a minute, but there will likely be more arrests if there is more strict guidelines as to what is going to be used to be a criminal. So there's also a lot they mentioned about AI reliability, and I asked about how are we accounting for human error in programming or simply faulty manufacturing of the robots, and then the speaker failed to explain how they would work around it. They simply say that it wouldn't happen or it would happen less. And finally, nobody wants to be a cop, allegedly. But it's not about wanting to be a cop or not. Some people just have to. Like, I'll also go over that in a minute. But a lot of people just rely on that job, and they don't really have a choice. So the robots wouldn't really change their situation. So now over my point, I wanna introduce like what does this world that the government proposes would look like. So first of all, they're speaking about planning a gradual replacement, going by different areas and slowly replacing the cops with Robocops. But which areas will be chosen first for these gradual replacements, and how loosely policed or how much more policing will be in certain areas proportional to how it is already. And they didn't really go over that, even though I also asked them about it. Second, there's the manufacturing of the robots. Who is manufacturing these robots? Is it a private company? Is it a company owned by the government? How would this be paid for? Because assuming that it is, in any situation, like the taxes are going to be raised in order to pay for this, because this will be significantly more expensive than the salary of, say, 5,000 cops in a given area. And also, if it is done by a private manufacturer, are we really willing to give this much power to a private company? Are they gonna be the ones who continue to redefine morality in our society in the future? Also, let's talk about jobs and how many people rely and how many families rely on the income from being a cop or working in the police, and how many jobs will be lost and made irrelevant by the introduction of these robocops. We're not only talking about the cops who are on the field, but also other roles within the police station, maybe also being irrelevant because of the introduction of the Robocops. And if you say, well, we can just make them work in a different area, or we can just redirect them to different jobs, well, if somebody has been a cop for, say, 30 years of their lives, do you think those skills are actually transferable to the computer? Like maintenance or programming? Like, no. These people are gonna lose their jobs and they're gonna become poor because a lot of families rely on that income. And also, I would like to talk about the excessive surveillance that would be present in the case of the introduction of robocops. Because why do we have police surveillance? It's so people can feel safe in their environment. Would they really feel safer if there's mass surveillance? If they are always being watched? There's a lot of media that has made us aware that mass surveillance is not something that we should strive for or accept. It is not. And finally, I would also like to talk about the importance of nuance in policing and how that would be absent in this robot. As the government established, they would be acting by the book, so no exceptions. Everything would be a certain way. So say somebody was at the supermarket and their baby grabs something from the aisle and they walk out, they don't realize the baby has it, and now they are arrested all of a sudden and there's no exceptions being made. They say that this would make more fair policing, but fairness is important. For fairness to be present, it is important to take account the context of the thank you.
I kind of speak for that speech. Now I call on the government to speak and close out government. Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I'm just gonna tell you why we be opening government. So yes, they highlighted these robots are gonna prevent racism. However, Antonia also highlighted that what's really is actually more important than preventing racism is the impartiality of these robots. Why is impartiality so important? Well, it is really important because every decisions are really hard to make, but they're necessary. They have to be made. So, for instance, when there's one person who steals, yes, it is kind of sad that they have to steal. But this is like, if we talk about justice, they have to be punished for that. And a police officer might feel paid for that person, a robot will not. So a robot will make decisions that are necessary, even though they're hard, emotionally hard, because they are impartial. So this is really important. Also, opening government did not say that these robots are also gonna probably prevent sexism because biases are not trained in them. Also, just back to my previous point, that impartiality is also going to be really important because we all know that cops are usually impartial or like biased towards their families or their friends. But this is not going to be present in robots, which is again really important because we don't want the cops to favor their friends. Also, opening government did not mention this, but Antonia added this with robots, dangerous neighborhoods will be better for you because we all know that when there's a dangerous neighborhood, police officers, a little bit afraid to go there and take necessary action. So for instance, when we look at southern Italy, it's not really police crime kind of like it's kind of run by crime. Or criminals, police officers simply to go there and take action because these criminals have a lot of power. However, robots will not be afraid to do this. So this is going to be really important that dangerous neighborhoods are going to be better police because now we can see that we can't have this like split in society between dangerous and non-dangerous neighborhoods. However, with robots, we can make these dangerous neighborhoods a little bit safer, and this can provide some consistency and stability in our society. And we can have more social cohesion. Also we also highlighted that the open government did not do that. These robots are also going to be a really important solution to the shortage of cops. We all know that it is an undesirable job because it is really underpaid. It's also really dangerous. So there is a shortage of cops, and this is going to be a really big problem in the long term. And we know that this is coming, so we might as well start acting right now, so we have more time to effectively kind of like develop our robots and have more effective ways of kind of dealing with crime. Also, we need to leader of opposition acts. So we heard that the production of these other robots are going to be really expensive. However, we do say that these robots are going to be developed by the EU, and within the EU, there's like 27 countries, I think, and these countries do have a lot of money. We do know that the more countries we have, the more money we have. So eventually, I think when a lot of like relatively wealthy countries come together and they produce robots together, then I think the cost that's going to be imposed on one individual country, it's not going to be that high. So we do not think that it's going to be expensive, and we also do think that this is going to be worth it at the end because it's going to be really effective. Also, the opposition has said that these robots are going to have biases still because they're trained by people. However, we do think that biases are usually influenced by emotions. Because, for instance, if we just think that a person who has biases towards like a certain race, and this bias is gonna get made worse by certain emotions, these biases can work. So for instance, when you already have bias towards that person, and then you kind of like also start feeling like hatred towards that person, and these biases are going to get so much worse. However, robots, this is really important, I want to highlight this, robots do not have feelings. So even if maybe they could be potentially biased, but we do not think so, then these biases are not going to be made worse by emotions. Also, they said that there are no faking computers nowadays. However, and Henry also highlighted this before, but I just want to say that for instance, we have self-driving required, so we already kind of like trust computers with our life. We have Teslas, we let cars drive us. We can cause accidents. However, we do have function between them because we are already using them. They're already present in our lives. Furthermore, opposition or also that AI is a long, slow process and it's going to take a lot of time to develop it. However, we also do think that training police officers is also a really long and slow process, and it's going to produce eventually biases. So we might have like a long, slow process when it comes to like developing robots. However, at the end, it's going to be worth it because they're not going to have these biases. Also, it's that police officers usually come from minorities. I just want to say that this is really, really not true. Like, especially when it comes to, like, for instance, Hungary, a lot of people that come from the minority, they unfortunately do not have access to quality education, so they do not have being police officers just really, really not accessible for them. So it is really sad, but robots are not going to make a difference here. I'm sorry. Also, just in response to opposing opposition, with with robots, there's going to be an unemployment of us. And I think why we're opposing opposition is that what we think is that these robots are going to be trained by these laid off cops. And why is this really, really bad? Because obviously cops, they have been doing their job, they've been trained, so they really know how justice is done and how crime is committed, so they can kind of like add down their experience and their training to these robots. So they're going to be paid for obviously like helping these robots and training these robots. So they're not going to lose their jobs and there's not going to be any unemployment. They also said that taxes will be raised. However, again, we don't think that this is the only option to kind of like produce robots. Countries can, for instance, borrow money to like develop these robots. Yes, so basically why we win this debate is because we highlighted impartiality. We also highlighted that this is going to prevent sexism and racism. We also highlighted that dangerous neighborhoods will be so much better, and this is going to cause more consistency, stability, and security in society.
I thank the speaker for that speech. Now I call on the opposition whip speaker to close out the debate.
I would like to start my speech off with something battle. It was said in the government book speech that impartiality is necessary, and that is what one of the most important things in the state was, and this is necessary for justice. And the example used on our side was the idea of how in certain situations a cop may let things slide. It may be a minor crime, it may be someone, you know, who's not well off, who needs certain things, and usually with empathy, they may let it go. We would like to say that this shows no pity, no empathy, and it's just inhumane to have robots who charge people for absolutely any crime, despite the situation. We would like to reiterate that the context is very, very important to assessing crime. Furthermore, it was said that this impartiality is necessary in order to increase trust. Well, it may actually decrease trust, because then you may think that no matter what the situation, what happens, you're going to get arrested, no matter how small, no matter whether it's accidental, no matter the other circumstances. Furthermore, it was said that this may end sexism potentially because of the lack of bias. Now, we'd like to talk about how the manner in which these robots will be trained actually shows that they won't end the bias, and this has been mentioned by the government side, and I will lead on to this further in my speech. There was also mention about this being a better solution as there's a sort of shortage of cops and they're underpaid, and how this won't be expensive because of the EU, and how because these cops will be training these robots, they won't actually lose their jobs, and just a massive point about that. I would like to say currently a lot of countries are going through recession due to COVID-19, due to other mitigating factors. So actually, a lot of countries aren't wealthy right now, and they don't have the facilities to be funding Robocop, whether they're part of the EU or not. And as it's been pointed out, that this is something that we need to do now due to the supposed shortage of cops. So actually, Robocop isn't the solution. The solution would probably be to incentivize people to join the workforce, and that will be significantly quicker. Moving on.
What information?
No, sorry. Moving on, I would like to talk about how the bias will still be there, because whilst robots don't have emotion, they will still have stereotypes to form patterns out of, because ultimately it's AI. It's going to recognise patterns, it's going to machine learn, it's going to learn from its experiences, it's going to create its own patterns and stereotypes, regardless of what we perceive as racism. There's going to be other biases. And lastly, I would like to say about how once police officers have trained these robots, they're still going to lose their jobs, because these robots aren't going to need further training. And if they do need further training, it won't be from the experiences that these police officers already have, as they've put the workforce, and they're gaining no
What information?
experience. Okay.
Should we not automize anything then?
No, I think I don't agree with that. I don't think that we should not automise anything. But in this situation, the factors show that right now it's not the right situation. We don't have the right information. We don't have the ability to properly instate Robocops and automise this particular sector at this point. No, sorry. I'd like to move on to focus on the points of clash throughout the state. So at the top of the bench, it was argued by government that the zone by zone and not mass replacement was one of their most important points, and the idea that biases would be eradicated, and the fact that everything would be done by the book, therefore it would increase faith in the justice system, and the idea that this would make it more efficient. I would like to say to this that whilst the zone by zone and not mass replacement is a very good idea, that again is a very long-term solution, and it doesn't match up with the bottom of the bench, where they said that there's a sort of shortage of cops now and a solution is needed now. It's an immediate thing that's required. Furthermore, I would like to talk about how it was said by the Deputy Prime Minister that there will be more convictions as it's done by the book, therefore more people will be convicted of their crimes, and therefore this will be more efficient. However, I'd like to say it's efficiency. We're still going to have the same number of courts, we're still going to have the same number of judges, we're still going to have the same number of trials. The current efficiency is not due to a lack of arrest or a lack of conviction, it's just due to the judicial system, which is almost separate to the police force. Whilst they play hand in hand, they're not directly correlated. Furthermore, I would like to reiterate a point which said by my member of Parliament about how are these zones chosen. Zone by zone implementation sounds like a lovely thing. But who chooses these zones? How are they chosen? On what basis are these chosen on? There is potential for bias to already be there by the choosing of the zones. It's not been clarified by anyone on the government side about how this will be done. Furthermore, the law itself already has implicit biases. These are written into the law. That is statutory information that we cannot change. No one can change. It's our constitution. Now, that shows that biases will not be eradicated. They'll still be there. And these, whilst minor biases, you could argue that yes, these biases are significantly less than and racism and stereotypes, but they still exist, and we're not getting rid of them. So therefore, the status quo shows that it's not that bad. Moving on to the bottom of the bench, I would like to discuss about the topics of it being economically better, which I touched on earlier. We don't actually really know how this is going to be instated. There's been talks about private companies, there's been talks about Google, there's been talks about EU, the state. There's not been any agreement about how this would be done. And on our side of the bench, we believe that the most feasible way in which this would be done, as it's been clarified, would be through a private company, and that the economy would therefore suffer as it would be expensive and we don't have the funding for it. Furthermore, we would suffer, as it was said by top bench opposition, that the Robocop would not get any input from minority communities. To which it was said by the closing side of government that they would use local input and local input would be given to these Robocops. It's basically asked how. They've not told us how or why or what's the implementation. And it was also said to have they try and like implement some sort of universal standards to ensure that they're all functioning the same way, following the same rules, assessing everything in the, as it was said, to the book. However, we bring up the idea of it being global, and it was again mentioned in the same speech that some communities are different and therefore they should be treated differently. But then does this not then contradict the idea of a universal standard? Lastly, I'd like to talk about how there was mentions about police officers being able to advance into potentially less dangerous things such as detectives, but that's just not true because for the reasons I beg you to propose a motion.
I thank all the teams for great debate. Shall we come and shake hands and leave the room after a few minutes before you guys to the floor and over you. Matt, you want to close the sure. Thanks. Yeah. You can do it. Just close the live stream.
Really like your.
Thank you very much. It means a lot. It takes a lot to get it here, so I appreciate it.
Just